The ER was loud until it wasn't. The automatic doors burst open and a 7-foot tattoo-covered giant stormed inside. Veins bulging, fists clenched, eyes wild. "Move!" he roared. "Where is she?" Security rushed him. They didn't slow him down. One guard hit the wall. Another went down hard. Doctors froze. Nurses scattered. Someone shouted, "Call the police." And then everyone saw her. A rookie nurse, blonde, calm, standing directly in his path. No fear, no shouting. The giant swung. 3 seconds later, 300 pounds of muscle hit the floor, neutralized, immobilized, gasping for breath. Silence crushed the room. A surgeon whispered, "What did she just do?" The nurse adjusted her badge and said quietly, "Please sedate him. He's not violent. He's panicking." No one in that ER knew the truth yet. That the move she used wasn't taught in nursing school and that she hadn't learned it in a gym. She learned it as a Navy SEAL before the night her partner died in her arms. Before we begin, take 2 seconds to comment, "We love veterans." And hit subscribe. These stories only survive because people like you stay with them. The ER was already stretched thin when the automatic doors blew open like something had detonated behind them. A 7-foot giant stormed inside. White skin flushed red, veins standing out like cables beneath a web of black tattoos that wrapped his hands and climbed his forearms. Names, dates, symbols no one in that room could read fast enough. He moved with the momentum of a freight train, boots hammering tile, breath ragged, eyes wide with a fear that had nowhere to go. "Move!" he bellowed, voice tearing through the room. "Where is she?" Security lunged. They didn't slow him down. One guard hit the wall hard enough to rattle a crash cart. Another went down, skidding across the floor. Doctors froze mid-step. Nurses scattered behind stations and gurneys. Someone shouted for police. Someone else reached for a panic button and missed it with shaking fingers. And then the room noticed what the giant didn't. A rookie nurse stood directly in his path. She was blonde, early 30s, scrubs a size too big, badge still stiff like it hadn't been worn long enough to soften. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't run. She didn't flinch. She simply planted her feet and lifted her hands, palms open, eyes steady in a way that felt out of place in the chaos. The giant swung. 3 seconds later, 300 pounds of muscle folded. Not smashed, not hurt, neutralized, and pinned to the floor, gasping, immobilized by angles and pressure points no one in that ER recognized. The sound of his body hitting tile echoed once and then vanished into a silence so complete it felt physical. Every eye locked on the nurse. A surgeon whispered, "What did she just do?" The nurse adjusted her badge, checked the giant's airway like this was any other patient, and said quietly, "Please sedate him. He's not violent. He's panicking." No one moved. Because no one in that room had ever seen a rookie do that. Her name was Ava. She'd been there 3 weeks, assigned vitals, stalking, transport, safe corners of a department that ate the uncertain alive. She apologized too much, spoke softly, avoided attention. The seasoned staff had already decided what she was. Book smart, fragile, temporary. They were wrong. Dr. Marcus Hale, Chief of Emergency Medicine, had made that judgment out loud. "This place isn't for people who freeze," he told her on her first shift. "Not unkindly, just final. People die in seconds here." Ava had nodded, eyes down. "I'll do my best, doctor." She had meant it. She also hadn't meant what he thought because Ava wasn't new to seconds. Earlier that night, a toddler had come in blue and choking, panic rippling through the bay. While Hale fumbled for equipment, Ava had stepped in without a word. Hands moving with a precision that didn't match her usual hesitance. The obstruction was out in 5 seconds. The child cried. Color returned. Ava stepped back, cheeks flushing. Lucky, she'd murmured when someone stared too long. They'd accepted that explanation because it was easier. Now the giant groaned on the floor, restrained, sedated, tears streaking through the anger on his face. "She's dying," he choked. "You don't understand. She's dying." Ava knelt beside him, voice low enough that only he could hear. "I do," she said. "And I need you to breathe." He did because something in her tone made him. His sister arrived minutes later on a gurney. Chemical burns, blunt trauma, skin blistering in patterns that didn't fit the story on the intake sheet. Ava noticed the smell first, sharp and wrong, like metal and sweetness braided together. She noticed the tremor in the woman's hands that wasn't shock. She noticed the way the giant's tattoos, names, and dates stopped at one blank space on his wrist. While the team argued over protocol, Ava worked the periphery, adjusted monitors, repositioned lines. Her eyes never left the patient. When the seizure started, she spoke once, calm and certain, cutting through the noise. "This isn't trauma. Treat the toxin." Hale snapped back. "You don't know that." Ava met his gaze. For the first time, there was no apology in her eyes. "I do." They treated anyway because there was no time to debate and because something in her certainty felt heavier than hierarchy. The convulsion slowed, the color improved, the room exhaled. Later in the hallway, a resident hissed, "You overstepped." Ava nodded. "I understand." She always did. Security cleaned up the broken glass. The police arrived and left. The giant tattooed hand, shaking now, sat with his head in his palms, whispering apologies to anyone who passed. Ava brought him water. He couldn't meet her eyes. "You didn't fight me," he said finally. "You stopped me." "That's different," Ava replied. Dr. Hale watched from the desk, unsettled. He pulled her file, expecting nothing, and found almost nothing. Clean, sparse, too clean. He made a call to an old contact who owed him favors, then another. Each answer raised the hair on his arms. He didn't know yet what Ava had been before she became a nurse. He didn't know why her hands never shook when everyone else's did. He didn't know why the move she used on a 7-foot man had been designed to control, not punish. And he didn't know why the smell in that trauma bay had dragged Ava somewhere far from St. Mercy's. Somewhere with sand in her teeth and radio screaming names that would never answer back. By dawn, the department would be forced to choose between rules and results. By noon, someone would ask Ava where she learned to do what she did. And before the end of the day, the truth about the night her partner died in front of her would collide with the life she built to forget it. Dr. Hale closed the file, heart pounding as the monitors in the trauma bay spiked again and the tattooed giant stood up, eyes wild with a new fear. Because whatever was happening to his sister wasn't finished yet. And neither was Ava. The first thing Ava noticed when the sun began to rise was how quiet fear sounds when it settles in. St. Mercy's ER had survived the night, but it hadn't recovered. Nurses moved slower, voices stayed lower, and every set of eyes tracked Ava when they thought she wasn't looking. The chaos had passed. Yet, something far more dangerous lingered. Uncertainty. Dr. Hale hadn't slept. He sat in his glass-walled office, coffee untouched, staring at the blank section of Ava's personnel file like it was mocking him. No military history, no gaps, no flags. And yet she had taken down a 7-foot man without hurting him, identified a toxin no one else recognized, and spoken with the kind of authority that doesn't come from textbooks. People don't learn that in nursing school. Across the hall, the giant Ethan Rowe sat hunched in a chair beside his sister's bed. In the daylight, he looked different, still massive, still covered in ink. But now the rage had burned off, leaving behind exhaustion and shame. His hand shook when he tried to hold the plastic cup Ava brought him. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he said quietly, staring at the floor. I've lost people before. I wasn't going to lose her." Ava nodded, setting the cup within his reach. "Fear makes the body lie," she said. "It tells you violence is the only way to protect what you love." He finally looked at her, then really looked. "You didn't look scared of me." "I was," Ava replied honestly, "just not for the reason you think." Down the corridor, the charge nurse whispered to another, "That's her. That's the one who dropped him." Someone else murmured, "Did you see her hands? They didn't shake once." Another voice added softer, almost reverent, "She runs a room like she's done it 100 times." Ava kept her head down and pushed a supply cart past them. She had learned long ago that attention was dangerous. Attention asked questions. Questions dug holes she'd buried with care. But the ER wasn't done testing her. An incoming alert shattered the fragile calm. Multiple victims from a highway pileup. Rollover. Fire involved. Unknown chemical exposure from a cargo truck. The words unknown chemical snapped something awake in Ava's chest. Hale stepped out of his office already barking orders, but the room didn't organize the way it usually did. People hesitated, looked at Ava, waited. She didn't speak right away. She watched the monitors, counted breaths, noted which hands trembled and which didn't. When she finally spoke, it wasn't loud, but it cut clean through the noise. 2 triage lines, she said. Keep anyone with respiratory distress away from the main bay. We don't know what they were exposed to. A resident bristled. That's not protocol. Ava met his eyes. Neither is losing half the room because we waited. Hale hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Do it. The doors burst open again. Stretchers poured in. Screams. Smoke-stained clothing. A man coughing up foam. Ava moved like she had earlier, but this time she didn't retreat after each decision. She stayed, directed, corrected. Her hands moved with the economy of someone who had learned to conserve energy because waste gets people killed. A woman went into respiratory failure. Ava was already there. Mask sealed, airway adjusted before the attending reached the bed. A teenager seized. Ava called the dosage without checking a chart. When someone asked how she knew, she didn't answer. Dr. Hale watched it all with a tightening in his chest. This wasn't luck. This wasn't instinct. This was training. Between patients, Hale made another call. This one went somewhere deeper. The voice on the other end went quiet when he said Ava's name, then colder. You didn't get that from me, the voice warned. But stop digging. Some people are alive because they disappeared. Hale ended the call and leaned back, pulse racing. Meanwhile, Ethan stood frozen at the edge of the trauma bay, watching Ava work. The nurse who dropped him now held pressure on a bleeding artery with one hand while instructing a doctor twice her age with the other. He saw how she never raised her voice, never wasted motion, never looked away when things went bad. She fights like she loves, he whispered to no one. His sister stirred for the first time since the night before. Her eyelids fluttered, her fingers twitched. Ava noticed instantly. You're safe, Ava said gently, stepping close. Your brother's here. Ethan broke. He sank into the chair, face in his hands, shoulders shaking. When Ava placed a hand on his arm, he flinched, then relaxed. I thought strength was about being bigger, he said harassingly. Turns out, it's about control. Ava didn't respond. She couldn't because control was the lie she'd built her life on and it was cracking. That afternoon, a code blue rang out. Pediatric. A 6-year-old boy pulled from a burning vehicle. Smoke inhalation. Severe hypoxia. The room moved fast. Too fast. Someone called time when the monitor flatlined. No, Ava said sharply. The words stopped the room. She was already on the bed. Compressions perfect, voice steady as she counted under her breath. You don't stop while there's heat in the body, she said. You stop when the body tells you to, a resident whispered. She's breaking. Protocol. Hale stared at Ava's hands. He'd seen those hands before on a grainy video during a training he barely remembered. He didn't know where or when, but his body recognized the truth before his mind did. Let her work, he said. The boy's heart stuttered, then found rhythm. When it was over, Ava stepped back, chest rising, eyes unfocused for just a second too long. A memory slammed into her. Sand, heat, blood soaking into gloves that weren't hospital blue. A man's voice, weak but joking, telling her she'd always hated being wrong, her partner. She swallowed it down and returned to the charting station. Dr. Hale approached her slowly like she might bolt. Where did you learn to do that? Ava didn't look up. I didn't, she said. I learned how not to fail. That night, long after the ER quieted again, Hale finally said the words he'd been circling. You were military, Ava's pen paused. For a while, she replied. SEAL. Her jaw tightened. Just once. For a lifetime. Silence stretched between them. Hale nodded, understanding dawning with a weight that bent his spine. I'm sorry, he said, for judging you. Ava finally looked at him. Most people do, she said softly. It keeps them comfortable. As Hale walked away, Ethan approached, towering, but careful now. If you ever need someone to stand between you and the world, he said, voice low. I'm here. Ava gave a tired smile. I already survived worse. But she knew something had shifted. The ER had seen her. The past had surfaced, and the next time she stepped forward, hiding wouldn't be an option. Because when you show people how dangerous you are in order to save lives, they stop letting you disappear. If you believe people should never be judged by how they look, comment, never judge. The truth doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks. It seeps through the cracks people leave behind when they think they're being careful. By the third night, St. Mercy's ER had stopped pretending Ava was just another nurse. They didn't say it out loud. They didn't need to. The way people moved around her had changed. Doctors paused before disagreeing. Residents watched her hands instead of their charts. Even security men who had drawn weapons on a giant less than 48 hours earlier nodded at her now like she belonged on their side of the line. Ava felt it, and it scared her more than the chaos ever had, because attention was how she lost people. Dr. Hale kept his distance, but she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Not with suspicion anymore, with something closer to guilt. He had dug just far enough to know he'd stepped onto ground that could swallow his career whole if he kept walking. The problem was the ER didn't care about careers. It cared about survival. Just after midnight, the radio crackled again. Not an ambulance call, not a police request. A secure channel Hale hadn't heard in years lit up his console, and the color drained from his face when he saw the identifier. Trauma Bay 3, he said quietly. Now, Ava followed without asking why. The patient arrived unconscious. Male, late 30s, no ID, no witnesses, no story that made sense. Multiple blunt force injuries, clean entry wounds that didn't belong in a civilian incident report. Ava clocked the pattern instantly. It was wrong in a way only someone who'd seen too much violence could recognize. This wasn't an accident. She leaned in, adjusting the collar, eyes narrowing. This was controlled, she said. Not random. A resident frowned. You can't tell that from Ava cut him off without raising her voice. Look at the bruising. Look at the spacing. Whoever did this knew exactly how much force to use to incapacitate without killing. Hale felt his stomach drop. He recognized the tone now. It was the same one he'd heard during disaster response briefings. When people stopped speculating and started surviving. As they worked, Ava's mind slipped unbidden into another place. Sand under boots, heat that pressed in from all sides, radios chirping names and grid references. Her partner Jack grinning at her through dust and sweat. Tapping the side of his helmet like it was a joke. You worry too much, Lane. She'd worried anyway. She always did. The memory sharpened when the patient's vitals dipped. Ava's hands moved automatically, sealing an airway, correcting a mistake before anyone else noticed it had been made. Jack's voice echoed in her head softer now. If I go down, you don't stop. You keep moving. She kept moving. Outside the bay, Ethan paced. He'd insisted on staying nearby. His massive frame wedged awkwardly into a chair meant for half his size. Every time alarm sounded, he flinched. He watched Ava like she was the only thing anchoring the room. You ever notice, he said quietly to a passing nurse, how she never wastes a step? The nurse nodded. You ever notice how that scares people? Inside, the patient seized hard. The monitor screamed. Ava was already there bracing, voice steady. He's crashing because you're chasing the wrong problem. Hale looked at her. Then tell us the right one. She hesitated. That half-second was the most dangerous thing she'd done all night because saying it out loud meant admitting where the knowledge came from. This is post-capture trauma, Ava said finally. He was interrogated. The injuries are staged. His body's reacting to something that isn't here anymore. The room went quiet. That's not something you see here, a resident muttered. Ava met his eyes. You do if you know what to look for. They stabilized the patient barely. When it was over, Ava stepped back, hands shaking for the first time since she'd arrived at St. Mercy's. She hid them in her pockets, breathing through it. Hale didn't miss it. Later, he found her in the supply room staring at nothing. Your partner, he said gently. That's who you lost, isn't it? Ava didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was flat. He died in front of me. Hale swallowed. I'm sorry. So am I, Ava said every day. The words opened something she'd welded shut years ago. She told him pieces, not dates, not unit names. Just enough. How she'd joined young. How she'd been good, too good. How competence became expectation, and expectation became command. How Jack had been her counterweight. The one who reminded her she was human when everything else demanded she be a machine. How did he die? Hale asked softly. Ava closed her eyes. We were compromised. Extraction was delayed. I chose who we could carry and who we couldn't. Her breath hitched once. I chose wrong. Hale said nothing. There were no words that could sit safely in that space. The next morning, someone leaked. Not a name, not a file, just a whisper. A rumor that the nurse who dropped a 7-foot man and run the ER during a mass casualty wasn't who she claimed to be. By noon, hospital administration wanted a meeting. By afternoon, a black sedan idled across the street longer than necessary. Ethan noticed at first. "They're watching," he told Ava, voice low. She nodded. "I know. What happens now?" Ava thought of Jack, of the admiral who'd help her disappear, of the fake normal life she'd stitched together with shaking hands. "Now," she said, "they decide if I'm useful or dangerous." That night, the patient from Trauma Bay 3 woke up screaming. Not words, coordinates. Ava froze when she heard them. They were burned into her muscle memory. The same grid Jack had died protecting. She ran. By the time she reached the bay, security was restraining him. His eyes locked on Ava with wild recognition. "They're coming," he rasped. "You have to move. You have to." He flatlined. The room erupted, but Ava stood perfectly still, staring at the monitor. She knew that sound. She'd heard it echo through deserts and concrete rooms half a world away. Hale grabbed her arm. "Ava," she turned to him, eyes clear and cold. "This isn't over," she said. "It's just moved." As if summoned by her words, the doors at the end of the corridor opened. Men in suits stepped inside. No badges visible, no smiles. One of them spoke, voice calm, practiced. "Nurse Ava Lane." Every head turned. Ava felt the past rise up and wrap around her spine like a familiar. "Wait." She straightened. "Yes. We need to ask you some questions," the man said. "About what you did tonight and about who you used to be." Hale stepped forward. "You can't just." The man's eyes flicked to him. "We can." Ava placed a hand on Hale's arm. "It's all right," she said quietly. "I've been running long enough." She followed them down the corridor past Ethan, who stood up so fast his chair toppled. "Hey," he said, panic breaking through. "You're not alone." Ava paused, gave him a small smile. "I know." The doors closed behind her. And for the first time since Jack died, Ava wasn't sure she was coming back. The room they took Ava into wasn't an interrogation room. That was the first thing she noticed. No metal table bolted to the floor, no two-way mirror, no buzzing fluorescent light meant to weigh you down. It was clean, quiet, almost respectful. A small conference table, 2 chairs, a pitcher of water already poured, untouched. That was worse because rooms like this weren't for breaking people. They were for deciding what to do with them. The men who sat across from her never raised their voices. They didn't have to. One was older, silver at the temples, posture straight in a way that never leaves you once you've worn a uniform long enough. The other was younger, eyes sharp, tablet resting on his knee. "We know who you are," the older one said calmly. Ava didn't react. "We know where you trained. We know who you served with, and we know why you left." Silence stretched. Ava folded her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. "You used a control technique tonight." The younger man continued scrolling. "Not law enforcement, not civilian self-defense. Military-specific, designed to neutralize without injury." Ava looked at him then. "He didn't deserve to be hurt," she said. "He was scared." The older man stuttered her. "You always were like that." Her chest tightened despite herself. "You could have disappeared completely," he went on. "Changed your name again, moved states, found a quieter hospital, but you didn't." Ava swallowed. "People still need help, even if helping them puts you back on the radar." "Yes." The younger man leaned forward. "The patient who died tonight." Before he coded, he spoke coordinates. "Do they mean anything to you?" Ava closed her eyes. They meant everything. When she opened them again, the room felt smaller. "That grid is where my partner died," she said quietly. "It's not random. Someone wanted to see who would recognize it." The older man nodded once, satisfied. "And you did." "I didn't act on it," Ava said. "I stayed in my lane." The younger man's mouth twitched. "You've never stayed in your lane. That's why people lived." The door opened before Ava could respond. Dr. Hale stepped in, face pale but resolved. "If this is about liability," he said carefully, "everything she did tonight saved lives, including mine." Behind him stood Ethan. The suits hadn't expected that. Ethan didn't speak at first. He just crossed his tattooed arms and planted himself in the doorway like a wall that had decided it was done moving for anyone. "You're not taking her," he said simply. The older man regarded him. "This doesn't concern you." Ethan shook his head. "It does. She saved my sister and she saved me from becoming someone I couldn't come back from." Ava felt something crack in her chest. The older man stood. No one is taking her. He said finally. Not tonight. He turned to Ava. But understand this. You can't stay invisible anymore. Not after what you've done. You've been activated whether you like it or not. Ava met his gaze. Then I'll stay here. She said where I can help. The man studied her for a long moment, then nodded. We'll be watching. When they left, the room exhaled. Ava sagged back in her chair, suddenly exhausted in a way sleep wouldn't fix. Hale placed a careful hand on her shoulder. You don't have to explain yourself, he said. Not to me. I'm not afraid of explaining, Ava replied. I'm afraid of being needed again. Hale's voice softened. Maybe being needed doesn't have to mean being lost. The days that followed changed St. Mercy's ER in ways no policy memo ever could. Staff stopped whispering. They asked questions instead. Ava didn't dominate the room. She taught it quietly. Precisely. She showed security how to de-escalate without force. She showed residents how to read bodies, not just monitors. She showed Hale how authority could exist without fear. And Ethan stayed. He sat with his sister as she healed. He trained with security during off hours. He learned how to breathe before reacting. One afternoon, he handed Ava a small leather band, worn but carefully cleaned. It was my dad's, he said. He believed strength was about knowing when not to hit back. Ava slipped it onto her wrist. It fit perfectly. Then the call came. A high-risk intake. Male, armed, delusional. Police unable to contain him. ETA 2 minutes. The room stilled, eyes turned, not in panic this time, but expectation. Ava finished charting, tied her hair back into a clean bun, and stood. The motion was subtle, but everyone felt it. She adjusted the leather band, and looked at Hale. I'll take point, she said. Hale nodded